Dober večer, lepo pozdravljeni na teoretskem večeru Festivala literature sveta Fabula. Danes bo moj sogovornik francoski teoretik Didier Eribon, čigar delo Vrnitev v Reims je nedavno izšlo pri založbi CF v prevodu Iztoka Ilca. So, Didier Eribon, welcome, and I'm so happy that you're here with us and that we're going to have this conversation. I will start with the most obvious question regarding the presidential elections in France, which are going, the second round will happen.
Yes, I guess so, that which will be your first question.
And we could predict that we will see in this round Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen, which is something similar to what you predicted in a way a decade ago when your book that we're talking about today was published. And I'm wondering, are you disappointed by how politics is always the same and nothing changes, or did you see any maybe even positive changes in the past decade?
Actually, I must say that I was really sad and upset to see that I was right 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when Returning to Reims was published, because it was the beginning of that phenomenon of the rise of the far right wing, and the presidential elections 5 years ago, with Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen in the second round, this I did predict also. But at that time, 5 years ago, I wrote a text before the first round, because everybody was claiming to defeat Marine Le Pen, you have to vote for Emmanuel Macron in the first round. And I wrote a text to say, to vote for Emmanuel Macron is not to vote against Marine Le Pen, it's to vote for Marine Le Pen in 5 years. And now here we are, 5 years later, she's stronger, she's higher in the share of the votes than she was 5 years ago. And so it saddened me, it upset me to see that what I describe is exactly what is happening again, and that instead of reflecting on that, a lot of people will commit exactly the same mistakes and the same dangerous mistakes. And so we could think it's very only upsetting, but there is something which is very, very good news, which is that Jean-Luc Mélenchon, for whom I did vote with all my friends, won 22% of the votes. Marine Le Pen 33 and Jean-Luc Mélenchon 32. It was very, very close between the two of them. And it is the revival of left-wing dynamics. And people in the suburbs who did not vote anymore because they were so disgusted by politics, French politics, the parties, and so on, the left-wing parties. They were disgusted, and so they didn't want to vote anymore. They did abstain, and these people went back to I don't know the word in English, went back to vote and did vote for Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who won in the suburbs, in the popular working class suburbs of Paris, sometimes 50-60% of the votes, which was really, really impressive. And so it's and in the younger people between 18 years old to 24 years old voted massively for Jean-Luc Mélenchon, especially in the cities like Nantes, Lille, Grenoble, where there are important universities. So these youths from the working class areas in the suburbs of the big cities, especially of Paris, and this youth and this suburb aggregated their votes in order to support Mélenchon and Mélenchon's dynamics. So he will not be in the second round, but it's very encouraging, because you can think that now there are the election for the parliament at the end of May and in June, and we hope that France Insoumise, Jean-Luc Mélenchon's movement, will win a lot of members of the parliament, of seats, and it will change everything if there are a lot of them in the parliament. I don't know if it will happen, but this is what we can hope.
Another thing happened in the last 5 years, or in the last 3 years, that you were also vocal about, and this was the Yellow Vest movement. How did you think, is it too early or too late, maybe, to discuss the influence of this movement and what this movement actually did mean to you, or what kind of struggle did you see within this movement?
I think it was very clear that this movement was a kind of riot, upheaval, to express an anger against Macron's government and Macron's politics, which is a politics articulated with the neoliberal ideology and agenda, which is a dismantlement of the public sector, the dismantlement of the social security, of the health system, of the pension systems, everything which is public, which is social protection, was dismantled, destroyed by Macron. And these people, when Macron suppressed €5 contribution from the state to people to pay the rent of their apartment, and Macron said, "Oh, €5 is nothing, but for people who doesn't have anything, €5 was a very significant amount of money," and people were infuriated. And what happened also, this anger was in the street of Paris, of Marseille, other big cities. But what is striking is how Macron responded to that by police violence, which has been unprecedented since the years 1950 or 1960, during the Algerian War. There is a report, a survey, which has been published last week, which says that between November 2018 and January 2020, not even a year and a half, 28,000 people, demonstrators, have been wounded in France. 28,000. Can you imagine that? 28,000. And some of them were lost an eye. 32 people lost an eye. Hundreds have been severely mutilated. And so you cannot think that if this is the way you govern a country, that people will be very happy with that. So, but if they cannot demonstrate when they want to express their anger, because the police violence is so incredible that you are scared to go to a demonstration. I can say, I don't go anymore to a demonstration because I'm scared. And if someone like me don't go to a demonstration because it's too risky, too dangerous, it means that there's a problem, a democratic problem in the country, and these people have only today one way to express their anger, and it was to vote for Marine Le Pen. And in the north of France, in which was before in the 50s, the 60s, the strongholds of the left wing, of the working class movement, of the Socialist Party and the Communist Party were prominent in all these areas. Now these areas are désindustrialisé. You mean it's too difficult for me to pronounce this word? Okay, the industries are lost, and people are find temporary jobs, can find precarized jobs. They are unemployed. They find very, very badly paid jobs. So they don't vote anymore for the left, and they vote for the far right wing. This is exactly what I described already in returning to us. And this phenomenon has been more and more visible, and unfortunately more and more stronger and stronger. So here we have to understand what happened here, and I would say that there are two phenomena here. The first one is, of course, as I just said, the precarization of the working class, because the economics and the work itself, what work means has changed. I wrote in returning to us that my mother was a worker in a factory in the 1970s. When she was a worker, there were 1,700 workers in that factory, male and women and female, 1,700. There were 500 among them were members of the union, CGT, which was close to the Communist Party. It was a very, very huge power for the worker, a huge, it was a working class, mobilized or mobilizable, because and they were long strikes, massive strikes, and my mother was part of it. Then this factory closed. Where are the workers? Well, now they are dead, but where are their children, their grandchildren? They did not find a job in that kind of factory because all these factories were closing one after the other, and they could find work in, they were unemployed, or they could find work in Amazon warehouses. There were people who deliver the parcels of Amazon, and so they were a collective power because it was a kind of collective force, and this collective force has been destroyed by the transformation of the meaning of what is the economic situation, because there are still some, but not that many huge factories. So people were collectively involved in what they thought of themselves as the working class, and now they were isolated individuals. It's impossible to be a member of a trade union. It's impossible to go on strike. It's impossible to go on a demonstration. So yes, something has changed. If you are a collective force, you are a different person as a political subject than if you are isolated, if you are unemployed, if you are someone who drive a van to deliver parcels. I don't know if you saw that wonderful movie by Ken Loach, the British filmmaker, Sorry We Missed You. And in that movie, we can see two people of the British working class today. One is a couple. One is the man is work for Amazon in his van to deliver parcels, and the woman, his wife, is a woman who help elderly people in their in their daily lives. So they are. How can they get on strike? How can they mobilize? How can they cannot go? They do not belong to a collective force. So what can they do? Of course, what is to be a political subject is change. And the other part of the other phenomenon is how in France, in some other countries, the Socialist Party, the left-wing parties, has become more and more converted to the neoliberal agenda. And the Socialist Party, for example, François Hollande, between 2012 and 2017, his politics was a kind of implementation of the neoliberal agenda. It's this neoliberal ideology, which was his ideology. And you cannot destroy the lives of people who did vote for you. In the working class area, people did vote for the members of the Socialist Party. And when they were elected, these members of the Socialist Party, as members of the parliament, President of the Republic, what did they do? They destroyed the life of the working class people who did vote for them. So what happened? If you do not feel represented by a party which was supposed to represent you in the to be to speak for you in the public sphere, if this party doesn't speak anymore for you, if this party doesn't represent you in the public sphere, what do? You don't vote anymore for this party, and you vote for another one. And unfortunately, this other one has been the National Front of Jean-Marie Le Pen, and then his daughter, Marine Le Pen. So these two phenomena, we could add some also other transformation, but the two main transformation, the shift to the right of the Socialist Party and the transformation of the organization of the economy, the end of industrialized factories, and where did Marine Le Pen win is the more votes in the north of France, where she won 40-50% in some precarized working class areas. And it's these people, their parents, their grandparents were members or sympathizers of the Socialist Party or the Communist Party, whose members were elected even on the first one very often, and now they don't exist anymore in the elections. Anne Hidalgo, the candidate of the Socialist Party, won 1.75%. They were before Macron's first election, 5 years ago, the Socialist Party was massively represented. Two-thirds of the parliament was socialist. The president was socialist. All the regions, the provinces were socialist. Everything was socialist. And now they win 1.75% in the last election. So you can see here that people don't want anymore to vote for them, to represent. They want to get rid of these people. So, but unfortunately, instead of voting for the left, they vote for the far right wing.
What I find very interesting and very important is that you keep using the term working class, and also you talk about class struggle and class society. But it seems that from the public discourse, this sort of phrases somehow disappeared. As you said before, the language has changed as well. The language of a community, of a class struggle has totally disappeared, and we have now new, let's call it maybe a neoliberal language, or how would you describe it? Did you notice that as well?
Yes, because, this is not that the working class has disappeared. The vocabulary to name it and to see it has disappeared. It's not exactly the same thing. If you don't want to name a reality that people are experiencing in their daily life, if you don't want to see them, which means to respect them, to speak to them, to speak with them, to ask to take into account what they want, what are their aspirations, and what they are, what they want. If you don't want to take that in account, people will make you hear that they are not very happy with that. And of course, the notion of social classes, the notion of the working class, you cannot keep the old Marxist notion. Of course, you cannot. We have to reframe, to rework all this notion, this concept. But of course, if you are, if you work in a Amazon warehouse, you're not exactly the same worker as the workers which were working in factories in the 30s or 50s. But you're still there is a new working class, and you have to name it and to realize that this is a working class. So this is a social class, and you cannot say, "Oh, class, it's a outdated notion. Today there is only a middle class in which everybody is part of." No, if you go in the north where people don't have enough to eat every day, you cannot think that they are the same middle class that people in Paris who are in the restaurants, very expensive restaurants every night. So there are classes. And there's kind of, the Yellow Vest movement was a class movement. The vote for the National Front is a class vote. So it's not exactly what we expect from the working class, but the notion of class is not, and the working class is not naturally and immediately related to the left. We always think that working class, if you are a worker, you vote for the left. No, if you are a worker, you used to vote for the left when you felt represented by the left. But if you did not feel any more represented by the left, you don't vote anymore for the left, and you vote for the right wing, the far right wing, or you abstain, because abstention is very, very high too in this working class area. So there are, yes, it's very important to reclaim history, to understand what is going on today, and it's very important to rework the concept of class, of class struggle, and so on, and social movement, and so on. But you cannot get rid of all this notion. And I think that the big mistake, it wasn't a mistake, they did want that, of the Socialist Party, of the official governmental left, was to think that social movement, working class as a class, were old-fashioned ideas, and you cannot get rid of what is the reality in front of you, in front of your eyes. If you say no, it does not exist, the Yellow Vest movement will remind you that they do exist, and that they are not very happy with what is happening in the country. So the Yellow Vest movement was very important, and then the movement against the dismantlement of the pension system was also very important. And both of these movements has been violently repressed. And of course, this you can understand that cannot go on. That cannot keep. The situation cannot keep on like that. And I'm sure that Emmanuel Macron will be re-elected. There is no risk at all that Marine Le Pen will be. I'm glad with that, but I will not vote for Emmanuel Macron because of that. He mutilated too many people for that. I cannot vote for someone who mutilated so many people who were demonstrating in the streets. And he's a stubborn politician, authoritarian, violent, conservative, authoritarian, and I cannot vote for him. But I'm very happy if Marine Le Pen is defeated without my vote. But I think there is no risk at all. There is no danger. But what I'm sure of is also that when he will be elected, he will keep on he will come back to his agenda. And he said so: pension system reform, and so reform of the universities, because he doesn't want that he wants that universities are concurrential. As though you can imagine that the universities is the goal of the universities is to be concurrential with the best one. So, which means that the children of the bourgeoisie will go to the best universities, and the children of the working class will not go to the university at all, or in second rank university. So all this is agenda. So I'm pretty sure that in September, October, November, there will be riots. His election will mean chaos. And the Gilets jaunes every day. Not Gilets jaunes, the demonstration was on Saturdays, it will be the Yellow Vest every day. So yesterday and today, there were demonstrations at the Sorbonne, in several universities in some other part of the country, where students say, we don't want Le Pen, we don't want Macron. No to neoliberalism, no to fascism. And they occupied the Sorbonne. They were expelled by the riot police. They were tear gassed. Everybody who wants to demonstrate here in the country is tear gassed. And they were beaten, battened. And all these people, the young people, the students, will demonstrate tomorrow in the streets, but before the second round, but they will demonstrate too after the second round. I'm afraid. I support them, so I'm not afraid, but it's a way of speaking. I think they are right to protest because they don't want the dismantlement of the university, the academia, as a public sector. You know, you cannot ask people to pay to more and more to have access to higher education. So here I'm sure that the election, second election of Emmanuel Macron will mean chaos, especially when instead of saying, oh, I know that I have been elected by the votes of different spheres of different parties, votes from the left. No, he said, I'm elected because of my agenda, because of my project. So if you think that if people vote for him in order to defeat Marine Le Pen, that means that they vote for him in order to put his agenda on the table again, and his terrible agenda. It is Margaret Thatcher 25 years later. And after Margaret Thatcher, we have Emmanuel Macron, a kind of disciple of Margaret Thatcher. And there was protests, there were riots in Great Britain, and there will be too now.
You, in your book Returning to Reims, you write one of the central figures is your mother. And I was wondering, how do you see connection between class and gender?
Yes, you know, in my book is gender is very important in my book. The main character of the book are my mother, my grandmothers, and the factory in which my mother used to work with other women, and so we can see that when we think of the working class movement, the working class history, we always think, not always, but very often, we used to think in terms of, without thinking about it, reflecting about it. You had the image of a male working class movement, or the history of the working class was the history of the male part of the working class. But there are, of course, women who used to work in the factories and who still work in factories or in warehouses today. But even when they didn't work, when they were at home, they were part of the working class, an important part, because they did raise the children, they did cook the dinners, and they were part of during a demonstration. Very often the women stayed at home, but they cook for the strikers, for the demonstrators. I remember my mother during May 68, the huge strike of May 68. My mother used to cook huge omelets for people of the family who were on strike, who did not have their salary and were a difficult time to buy food. And my mother cooked huge omelette for 12, 16 people in order to help. It was, she was not a factory worker at that time, but she was part of the strike of May 68 because she was cooking omelettes for the people who were on strike. So gender is, of course, you have to reflect on what does it mean to be part of a class? What does it mean to be part of a movement, to be part of a strike, and so on? But gender means also that you have to see that in the working class, you cannot idealize the working class. There is also male domination, male violence. My father was a violent man, and so between my parents, they were always arguing, shouting at each other, and so. the working class is also a place where gender, male domination, and women's subordination was very, very vivid. And so, if you want to talk about the working class, you have to take into account all these realities. And I would add also, if you extend the notion of gender to sexuality, to as a young gay, as a gay teenager when I was 16 or 18, I can say that, it is one of the reasons that I had to leave my family, my milieu, my city, Reims, because of the homophobia. Incredible homophobia of that milieu. And so with all the derogatory vocabulary to describe you, to insult you in the street, and this vocabulary is always to speak about you in gendered terms, you describe in terms of you are not a man, you are a woman, and you are not a boy, you are a girl. And so this is also a way of reflecting on gender, is how male homosexuality is gendered, cross-gendered, I can say. And of course, for female homosexuality, the other way, they are labeled not a girl, not a woman, but a boy, or a failed boy or a failed man.
What you also write about is that when you were a student, or later when you went to Paris, that it was easier for you to come out as gay than to come out as the son of a working class.
Yes, I must say that it has not been that easy for me to come out as gay. It took me time to do that. And it was a process. I was, when I was in Reims, I was ashamed of being gay. I was, and if you say I'm gay, or if you look like you are gay, you are insulted in the street, or insulted. If you're lucky, you can be physically assaulted and attacked, and it happened to me. So I know that it's not a fantasy or kind of a false story. It happened to me, and I know so many people and that happened to them. But then when I went to Paris, it became easier, year after year. It became easier for me to tell people I'm gay, because I met other gay people. But in Paris, I was step by step involved or inscribed in a new social milieu, not the bourgeoisie, but a milieu which was not at all working class. And in my new milieu, I was less ashamed of being gay and more ashamed of being a working class child with parents who don't read books, don't go to the concert or to the museum, and the accent of my mother or my father, and I was ashamed of that milieu, which was the milieu in which I was born and in which I was a teenager. And I had to leave because of the homophobia, but also because I want to dissociate myself from this milieu, to become someone else, to go to the university, to read books, to become a kind of in young intellectual reading Marguerite Duras or Simone de Beauvoir, Nathalie Sarraute, and Jean-Paul Sartre, Michel Foucault, and so on. So it was a reinvention of myself through, as a young intellectual, through the dissociation with my social milieu. And these two processes, the reinvention and the dissociation, went together and were intricated. And I know when my father died in 2006, that I realized that it was not only because of the homophobia of my father that I had to leave and I didn't want to speak to him anymore. It's because he was a working class man, having never read a book and ignorant of everything which was important for me. And then I realized, what is social violence? That you cannot speak to your father or to your mother because they don't read books, because they don't go to the concert or to the museum. What all this is not only about your economic situation. It's not how many, what is your salary, how many euros you earn a month, but also how many books, how many you read, how many movies you see, how many concerts you go to. So culture and cultural capital, as Pierre Bourdieu would say, is very, very important as a class. One of the most factor of the class divide, and even in your own family, the divide. If you read books, it's complicated to have a conversation with your father who never did. And as I said, I don't know if it is in returning to us, but I was. You have to get rid of the psychoanalytic greed of interpretation of the relationship between a son and his father as Oedipal complex. Also, it's not a question of a family, the family apparatus, the relation of a son. A kind of universal complex between a son and a father. It is linked to how much time you were in the school system, higher education, and the difference of time you were in the school system. And my father left the school system when he was 13. And of course, for me, I left the school system when I was 25. Of course, the gap is here. The impossibility to speak to each other was here. How long you stayed in the school system, how long you learned, how long you were educated. And so the class divide, you can see here how the class divide is linked to the school system. And the school system is a kind of mechanism, machinery, which selects some part of the population to the privileged part of the population, and the other people to the unprivileged, of despised, exploited part of the population, which was the case of my father. He was a factory worker, and he worked very hard, and so I had to reflect on that. What is the function of the school system? What is the function of culture, of reading books? Not that I want to stop to read books, of course, but what does it mean to read book as a social definition of yourself?
But luckily, there are not only institutions as school, but also others that help us survive, as, for example, self-organized communities, as in LGBTQ plus community, or different subcultures that help people feel integrated. What's your experience with that? What was their role in your 20s or 30s?
I can mention two realities. The working class community in which my family was anchored, and this is in large part disappear as far as I can see. The solidarity in the working class. Because in the north of France, exactly like in Great Britain, there were kind of a working class community with a very, very strong feeling of solidarity with each other, and especially in hard times or in the times of strike or the communities were very well organized with at the level of the city or in some very left-wing stronghold, socialist or communist in the north of France. There was here a very strong sense of community, which is, I think, largely disappeared because the communities has been dismantled by the transformation we discussed before. And the other sense of community for me has been when I arrived in Paris. Actually, I can say I was able to survive because of the gay subculture, the association, the bars, not that I don't want to idolize either these venues, but you not only you can find partners, sexual partners for one night or for more than one night, but also you can find friends, support, people. In his wonderful book, the American historian George Chauncey, his wonderful book, which is called Gay New York, he shows very well how people come from the small cities to New York in order to find people who you meet someone as a sexual partner, but he will tell you where to go, to which books to read. You don't know what to read, and you meet someone who knows better, who is older, who knows better. You must read this novel. You must see this movie. It's kind of a transmission of knowledge of cultural or subcultural, where to go to meet people. So friendship, what Michel Foucault called friendship as a way of life, has been very, very important to me because as I did not see my family anymore, I had to reinvent a kind of collective way of life with friends, friends of friends, and friendship as a way of life is something very, very important to me. So this is the sense of community, and for me the LGBT movement has been very, very important. And I wrote a book at the end of it was in 1989, a book called Réflexions sur la question gay, reflections on the gay question. The title doesn't sound very well in English because it's a reference to Jean-Paul Sartre, Réflexions sur la question juive, reflection on the Jewish question, and it was a reference to that. But of course, if you don't have this reference in mind, every French reader had it, but if you don't have the title of Jean-Paul Sartre in mind, you cannot understand the reference of my book. But for me, and in this book, I tried to reflect on what is a gay collectivity, LGBT collectivity, which is built from outside by insult. As you are insult, you think of yourself as an isolated individual, but people, when they insult you with all this derogatory language, vocabulary, they inscribe you in a collective, because in spite of you, they inscribe you in a collective. You are like other people, even if you don't want, you faggot or these derogatory words. They put you in a category, and this is a collective category. So you know that you belong to a category, and then that you don't want to belong to, but after some times, you reappropriate the insult and say, yes, this is exactly what I am. I'm a faggot, and I'm very happy to be with other people, to demonstrate in the street, to affirm what we are, what we want, what are our way of lives.
You mentioned demonstrations, and I see the questions of gender and sexuality as political questions. But there is a notion that they could also be, that this is part of the so-called identity politics. And I would like, maybe for the last question, to ask the hardest question for me. What's wrong with identity politics, or is it for you the identity politics? Can it be the future of politics?
Yes, for me, it's not a question of identity. The LGBT movement, we have so many different people who are part of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender people, and they don't form or build an identity. They are very different people. It is a movement in which all these different people, even I say gay, lesbian, but lesbian are not a unified category. There are different kind of lesbian, different kind of gays. And so it's not unifying movement. It's not the question is to build an identity. It's a movement in which you affirm, claim your right to be what you are, what you want to be, and so on. So for me, it's, the idea of identity politics is not relevant. It's and now it has become derogatory word to dismiss all this movement. But Black Lives Matter is not an identity politics. It's a movement to defend the lives of people who are killed, assaulted. It's an anti-racist movement. And the feminist movement is an identity politics. It's to affirm the right to walk in the streets at night with being assaulted, or even more obvious or less violent, to get to earn the same salary as a man in the same workplace. And so, and this is not identity politics. This is what I call social movements or cultural movements, which are very, very important. And I would not want to. I don't like when people oppose the working class movement or class movement to identity politics, because first of all, the gender and sexuality question are also at stake in the working class areas. In the workplace, you can be a gay factory workers. You can be a lesbian factory workers, or a worker in a warehouse. So you cannot oppose the one to the other. And if you want to think, you cannot homogenize or to to be the hierarchy of the movement, that working class movement is more important than feminist movement or LGBT movement or anti-racist movement. It cannot work that way. And all these movements have their own specificities, their own claims, their own traditions, and their autonomy. And so we cannot reconcile them in a kind of unify them in a kind of homogeneous idea of le peuple or the people. But you can see that at times, sometimes they can gather together to be part of, in May 68 in France, part of a revolt against the social order, against the institution, the oppressive institution, against all forms of domination, of all forms of power which are exerted on you. And so for me, the multiplicity of the movement, which is not about identity politics, because working class movement could be also labeled as identity politics, the identity of the working class. So I don't like this notion of identity. It's you can think of the multiplicity, the plurality, unsurpassable multiplicity of the social movement. And you can think that, for example, a political party like France Insoumise can relate to try to work, to take into account all these movements, to think what its agenda will be in order to represent all these people who have their own claims. And so it's not about identity politics, it's about social transformation in order to build a more equal society and to build some justice.
And for my last question would be, I heard that you're writing Returning to Reims, the second part, and I was wondering how this is going and what is so far the central point of your thinking about it.
Returning to Reims was written after the death of my father. When my father died, I decided to write this book in order to think about my personal trajectory and to reinscribe my personal trajectory in it's not about me, it's about the history of a family, of a milieu, of the working class in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and etc. So the second volume will be, I started writing after the death of my mother, and 2 or 3 years ago, and it's about what is to be a working class woman, what is to be a retired working class woman, what is to be a retired woman, aging woman, what is to be, what is your relation to the hospital, to aging, which means the hospital, the retiree house, and so on. And so it's about my mother. There is a wonderful book by Simone de Beauvoir, which is unfortunately one of his less well-known book, which is called in French La Vieillesse, aging, old age. I don't know the title in English, old age. And it's my new book will be a discussion. It's a book I admire, and I have a great admiration for Simone de Beauvoir. And in this book, Simone de Beauvoir, she says it's exactly the same book as Second Sex, but about another category, older people, the elderly. So she tried to describe and reflect what is to be, what is a condition of people who are aging. And this is a very important book. And I want to engage this book to reflect. Of course, it has been published 50 years ago, that to rethink notions, to rethink analysis, and because it's a very, very rich book, and to discuss and to rethink one of the main questions of her book. These people cannot speak for themselves. Who? And she said, I will speak for them. And I try to reflect, what does it mean to speak for people, in favor of these people, but also in their place. They don't speak, you speak for them, but it's important to speak for them, but they don't speak. What is the meaning of that political process where you speak for people who cannot speak for themselves? If you don't speak for them, they don't speak at all. Their voice are not heard at all. So I'm trying to reflect on this political, very, very limited case of being totally deprived of the possibility of being, remaining a political subject. My mother was a political subject when she was on strike in a factory. And then she lost this possibility when she was in this nursing house. She lost the possibility of being a political subject and of having a voice heard. So I will try to make her voice heard. She's dead, but the voice of people like her heard in the public sphere. But I know that if I speak for these people, the reality remains that they don't speak themselves for themselves, and it's kind of a reflection, but also to reflect on some realities. What is to be a resident of a nursing house? There is a wonderful, but the Bohumil Rabal, who said Czechoslovakian, but I know I cannot say this word, but I don't know if he was Slovak or Czech. It was Czech, actually. In French, les millions d'arlequins, millions of harlequins, and it's about the life in a nursing home. It's a magnificent book, and I try to reflect on the basis of this book of what it is to be a woman in this kind of institution, and what it is to be an aging person. And so your question, is it okay for the writing of the book? And I cannot say no, not very well, because it's very slow. It's too difficult. It's too painful, and so it will be. It was supposed to be published now, but it has been delayed. I must confess.
Well, hopefully you will be able to finish it soon, and you will also enjoy the writing process. But for now, thank you so much for this conversation. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you for your thoughts and for all the voices that you are putting out for other people. So many thanks, and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, Sam. I would have liked to come, but actually now it's not that easy for me to travel, and but I will come very soon. Thank you so much.
Or after the next book, hopefully we will get the
Yes,
translation
hopefully, yes.
sooner than in 12 years.
I would love that. Thank you so
Hopefully
much.
see you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.